Welcome to the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and it is time for the Week 17 quarterback and tight end rankings. Of course, running back, wide receiver rankings videos will be coming out. Please drop a like, that always helps. And if you are watching this video and you're not in the championship, first of all, congratulations if you are. Second of all, I assume, at least for the majority of you that are still watching it, that might mean that you play in Week 18, and I will be here. I will do rankings for you in Week 18, so, yeah, you're welcome for that. Let's see here. Anything else to announce? Not really. Just do really want to say thank you. It's been a great season as far as channel growth and everything, so I appreciate every one of you, new and old. It has been, yeah, you know, a good year, so I appreciate it. Couldn't do it without you. Now, let's look at my DFS buys for the quarterback position. Of course, you will get my DFS buys for this week. We'll review how I did with those last week and my love and my fade. But at the end of the quarterbacks, I will go over those, and then I'll cover the tight ends, same order. At the end, I'll do my Week 17 DFS buys, and yeah. Pretty self-explanatory. You can see the projections all up on the screen. Red is good, blue is bad, white is neutral for any of the cells that are highlighted. This little one next to the name is like a matchup gauge. And with that said, let's go to the DFS buys. Last week I said I'd be spending up for Justin Fields at 7,100 on DK, and he finished 4th on the week, so that was very good. Mid-priced guy, Baker Mayfield at 6,000 DK bucks, finished with just under 20 fantasy points, so not too terrible of a finish. Did end up finishing 13th on the week, so I don't know exactly where that lands on the value, but, you know, not a bad shot at it, at least, that's for sure. Then for a contrarian play, I gave you two names, Brock Purdy and Sam Howell. I don't really think it matters what price they were because they both sucked. And in the bargain bin, I give you Tommy DeVito at $5,000, who got sat because he was so bad, so... you know, we started off all right there, and it just kind of went steadily downhill. But let's see how I did with my loves and my fades. Well, one of each, because this is the quarterback position. For my love, I give you a Jake Browning last week, but I also nominated Joe Flacco as a co-love. And as I recall in the video, and maybe this doesn't even make the final cut of that video, but I'm pretty sure I commented on essentially Joe Flacco kind of taking over the love, but he didn't quite. So for Jake Browning, that was no bueno. He finished as quarterback 24. But if I would have just gone with Joe Flacco, it would have looked really good. He finished as the 3rd best quarterback of the week. So, you know, I guess I split it there. Then for the fades, I gave you Kyler Murray for my fade, and for the most part, it was a good thing that I suggested him to many people, even though I faded him, compared to the other options that they asked me. There's probably a couple of you that asked me between him and Joe Flacco, so I guess might not have always been the best choice, but he did quite well. He finished with just over 20 points on the week. Top 10 type of finish, a little ways ahead of Baker Mayfield, for instance, who finished 13th on the week. So with that, let's get to the quarterback rankings for this week. So here's my first tier, just a little tier of 5 quarterbacks, your must-starts. I got a little asterisk next to Brock Purdy. I don't think I quite got everybody right, but there's still some fluctuations going on about who's going to be healthy, who's not going to be healthy this week at, of course, every position. But so I do have, I think, 34 quarterbacks projected right now. Maybe even 30. I think I have 35 names here. One of them not ranked yet, Will Levis. So, yeah, you know, obviously you can always find these rankings up on the website. They'll get updated as any of that kind of major news comes out. And then, of course, I will be live on Thursday, on Saturday, and on Sunday, each prior to the games. Probably 2 hours each, I think we'll do at this point in the season, since I'll be there 3 times for you. So, hopefully, I'll be available for you. You can always ask questions in the videos as well. As far as this tier goes, you know, I could see some people might be concerned about Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott, but given the fact that Brock Purdy's going up against Washington, Dak Prescott's going up against Detroit, those are pretty good matchups that you're just not going to want to mess with. Let's move on to the second tier, oh gosh, spoiler alert, of quarterbacks going from quarterback 6 to quarterback 9, starting off with Patrick Mahomes, followed by Justin Fields, Russell Wilson, and Kyler Murray. And for this tier, a little bit on each. Patrick Mahomes, as you can see, is my fade of the week. He has a high floor. That's good. He's in a good matchup going up against Cincinnati. That's good. But how much do we really trust him at this point? And last week it really was, in part, at least him. But also, for the most part of the season, it's really been his weapons letting him down. But still, he's been solid enough. He does have a solid floor. But if you're looking for a ceiling, even with this matchup, I just don't know that he gets there. I don't think he really has all season, maybe once or twice. So I kind of like some of these other guys a little bit more if you're shooting for that ceiling. Let's go on to Justin Fields here. You're going to start him for his ceiling, and because he's better than Russell Wilson on the season. But Russell Wilson, you can see, has a really, really nice floor there going up against Los Angeles Chargers. It's a good matchup. Good week to start Russell Wilson. Hopefully, of course, that's when he lets us down. And then for Kyler Murray, also, you're starting him because of this ceiling here, going up against Philadelphia. Really good matchup. Let's move on to the next tier, which is just, as you might have noticed, one quarterback, and that's going to be Jordan Love, and he's just kind of in flux between these two tiers. It depends what happens with his weapons. He could have all of his weapons back this week, or he could be out more weapons than he started with last week. It's all possible. Don't really know. So that's going to, really fluctuate exactly how much we're going to trust him. He did do well last week without many of his weapons. So that was promising for him as a real football player and going into the future, but also in fantasy, he still had a solid week as well. He's been the EV quarterback 6 on the season. That is out of the quarterbacks who are being ranked currently, of course. But still, out of all the quarterbacks this week on the season, it's been the 6th best, and I would argue the 5th best, because one of those quarterbacks doesn't really have enough samples. Is Jake Browning, who had a couple of massive games and one bad game. So small sample size for Jake Browning that I'm sure would not hold true over the length of a season. Then let's move on to this 4th tier, which is going to be, I think, another small one. Yep, starting at quarterback 11, going down to Derek Carr at quarterback 15. We've got Baker Mayfield, Jared Goff, Tua Tagovailoa, Matthew Stafford, and of course Derek Carr, as I stated. And this is the do you want a ceiling or do you want a floor tier? Like, I don't care if you're choosing between Tua and Matt Stafford or Derek Carr, or Jared Goff and Matt Stafford and Derek Carr. It really depends what are you shooting for. So I put the ceilings up ahead of the floors because, hey, we're taking our shots at the ceilings. But if you're looking for the ceiling, it's going to be Jared Goff, Tua Tagovailoa. We'll get back to Baker Mayfield. If you're looking for the floor, it's going to be Matt Stafford, Derek Carr. Like, their floor is much better than I like the ceilings of Jared Goff or the floors of Jared and Tagovailoa. But at the end of the day, I am going to put a love tag here on Jared Goff. I got a pretty good feeling about Detroit being able to, struggling maybe a little bit on the ground or just being average on the ground against this Dallas run defense. This Dallas offense being able to score against their defense, forcing Jared Goff to hopefully pass well all day and have a big day. I think that's very, very possible in this matchup. So that is why Jared Goff is a love of the week for me. And for Baker Mayfield, he offers a bit of both. He's just, he's been playing very well. He's played well on the season. If this was a better matchup, unfortunately, he's going up against New Orleans, not the best matchup in the world. I would have Baker Mayfield higher this week. I would like him probably over Russell Wilson if he was just in a solid matchup. But it's not the best of matchups, so that's the concern there for Baker this week. Let's move on to this next tier. Oh, gosh. Trevor Lawrence here at quarterback 16, and he is playing over those that I have him ranked over for sure. Well, over, below him. I'm starting him for sure over them, but I'm also not starting him over any of these guys for sure. There's a definite tier break here, regardless of his health, because I don't think he's going to be coming into this game fully healthy, regardless if he plays or not. It's not really a high upside matchup for him going up against Carolina. They don't usually allow a whole lot of points to the quarterbacks, and I think that Travis Etienne should be able to have a big day, find success on the ground against Carolina, and thus, if Trevor Lawrence plays, not a whole lot will be asked of him. And coming off of a rough week last week, going to be banged up. Yep, just a little bit concerned about him, that's all. But also, I'd still trust him over guys like Nick Mullins, Joe Flacco, Jake Browning, and Gardner Minshew. Now, Jake Flacco Joe Flacco. If he wasn't playing against the New York Jets, that'd be a different story, but he is playing against the Jets. Excellent defense. Could easily cause him to have a bad day, so a high chance of busting for him, unfortunately. As far as Nick Mullins goes, ranked ahead of him at 17 there. You see projections, he projects really well after like 2 games here. Yes, he does have Jefferson this week, but unfortunately, he's not going to have Hawkinson for sure, and he's quite probably not going to be having Addison either. So despite the fact that this Green Bay defense has been absolute Swiss cheese for the last 3 weeks, probably, I don't fully trust Nick Mullins himself, and without all of his weapons, it gets really tough, and it makes it easier for this Green Bay defense to maybe have some semblance of when they were decent and at least made it tougher on offenses. So that's the concerns there. Jake Browning going to go up against Kansas City. It's a tough matchup. He's looked good for the most part, but I think he really needs Jamar Chase back in order for me to feel comfortable with starting him at all. Then we've got Gardner Minshew here going up against Las Vegas, and I really don't know about the upside of him this week going up against Las Vegas in this matchup, nor do I trust the floor with Gardner Minshew. So this is about where he projects, and I agree with it, so didn't really move him away from there. Then we've got another tier of quarterbacks here, and another tier after that. We got Easton Stick, Sam Howell, Geno Smith, Mason Rudolph, Tyrod Taylor, Taylor Heineke. Obviously, I like these guys just a little bit more than this next tier. Jacoby Brissett truly right on the borderline here, but going up against San Francisco, so kind of pushed him out of that tier with the matchup. Bryce Young, C.J. Beathard, Aiden O'Connell, Davis Mills, Ryan Tannehill, Bailey Zappi, Trevor Siemian to finish that up. Will Levis not ranked, so obviously we've got a couple of, in case I've ranked both Jacksonville quarterbacks and both, I don't know. And then, more information for Nick Mullins. Should probably have had an asterisk next to him. He might not be the starter this week. Apparently, they're looking at starting any one of their 3 options at quarterback, so we'll see who ends up getting the start this week. On to my DFS buys of the week for the quarterback position. Let's get you back up to the top for those rankings. Once again, you can see those on the website. I said that I will be spending up on Josh Allen at $8,200 because I think that if anybody is spending this much money, $8,200, $8,300, they're probably going to choose to spend the $8,300 on Jalen Hurts. Then at a mid-priced option, I like Brock Purdy at $7,000 DK bucks. If he plays, there's another asterisk guy there. He had a stinger. I think he's going to be fine and play, and if so, I do like him quite a bit. In the bargain bin, going to give me Derek Carr at $5,500 all day. That's probably who I'm going to go up with my lineups because I don't really like to spend up at quarterback. I like to try to find those gems. So I think that's a really good price this week for Derek Carr. Then in my loves, I told you my love and my fade. So that's it. Let's move on to the tight ends. And, of course, before we get to the rankings, you can see my tight end 1, Travis Kelce. What a surprise. Still hanging on there. Looked like he was going to lose that title this season, but a couple of others have faltered and or gotten injured, unfortunately, in the case of T.J. Hawkinson, who I think out-projected him because I accidentally projected him originally. But on to my DFS buys from Week 16. How did I do for a good buy? I said everybody is going to be going for Trey McBride, rightfully so, and David Njoku, also rightfully so. But Evan Ingram could stack up the catches in full PPR format. He got 15 targets, by the way, and offer you some contrarian playness as well. At $5,400, he's priced right between those two. And Evan Ingram finished 3rd at tight end on the week in full PPR formats. So that's what DK is, and unless there was a different scoring that went along that I missed, I wasn't able to double check if he finished 3rd on DK. But in full PPR finished 3rd, David Njoku finished 4th, and Trey McBride was a letdown on the week. So that definitely worked out for being a good buy and for the contrarian play there. And the discount bin, I gave you Cade Otton at $3,300 because it was a good matchup, and I mentioned that I have tried this with Cade Otton before and not had success, and once again, we were let down. He finished as tight end 50. Then for the contrarian play, I gave you Dalton Kincaid this week at $5,200. Last week, thinking ahead of myself, and Travis Kelce at $7,500. No, Dalton Kincaid is not my pick this week. And I said both will probably get ignored by many, and everybody was, if they were ignored by many, the many were correct. They both stunk. Then for my love of the week, I gave you Darren Waller. He finished 31st at tight end 31. That was no bueno. And I faded Dallas Goedert. He finished with 10 fantasy points. That doesn't sound great. Half PPR here. But that was good enough for the tight end number 10 on the week. And I think that's roughly where I had him ranked at least. So got that going for me. Let's move on to the rankings here. Starting off with Travis Kelce, as I mentioned, going down to tight end 7 is your must-starts. Don't think about it too hard. Travis Kelce followed by Sam Laporta, Trey McBride, George Kittle, Evan Ingram, David Njoku, Jake Ferguson. Yeah, nothing really to mention about him. I don't think I should have to do too much convincing. But if you do have two of these guys and you're debating between them, feel free to ask a question. I can give you a little bit of my explanation as to exactly why I ended up in, having one ranked over the others. So let's move on to this second tier of tight ends, which goes from tight end 8 down to, there we go, tight end 13. Starts off with Isaiah Likely, followed by Cole Kmet, Tucker Kraft. Cole Kmet injured in last week's game, may or may not play this week. Tucker Kraft might be having his running mate, the starting tight end of the Green Bay Packers, come back, possibly from a lacerated kidney. If so, that would obviously change his ranking, followed by Darren Waller, Dallas Goedert, and Dalton Schultz. Let's see, a little note on Darren Waller, my love of the week here, going up against the Los Angeles Rams. And primary note here is I'm going right back to the well. I gave him a love last week. He totally failed for me. Going back to it because the Los Angeles Rams are an excellent tight end matchup. They're a top 3 tight end matchup, and I have them ranked a little bit higher than the ECR does currently. So I liked it. Then a little note here for Dallas Goedert. I know that you see Arizona over here, and that looks really good, right? Like, smash matchup. Well, that's not exactly the truth as far as it being a tight end matchup. It is one of the worst, I think bottom 3 maybe, but one of the worst tight end matchups that there is in the league on the season. So it's not a smash matchup for tight ends. That's why you see this blue color over here. And yeah, so that's why I ended up liking some of these guys a little bit more. And you can shuffle these guys up pretty heavily in whatever order you want to. This is the order I ended up. Isaiah Likely going up against Miami. Really like the possible upside of that. Get in some sort of shootout with Miami. It's possible. And then Cole Kmet's been good. And, we'll like Dallas Goedert and Dalton Schultz over this next tier, which kicks off with Kyle Pitts at tight end 14. Going down to tight end 20, finishing off with Chig Okonkwo. In the middle, we've got well, let's see. Kyle Pitts going up against Chicago, so you can see why I do still like him enough. Gerald Everett going up against Denver, the best tight end matchup that there is. Fantastic matchup, and he has been getting used quite heavily as of late. So, yeah, expect that to probably continue in this week's matchup. He's a good play. I'm sure plenty of people will have him as like one of their starts of the week at tight end. Then Jelton Kincaid, not a good matchup going up against New England, or not expected to do well in this matchup apparently. And yeah, I mean, it's been frustrating as of late. Not totally giving up on that, but yeah, he'd be a little bit tough to start, but that's kind of what starts to happen at this point anyways. And we get to, like, Kyle Pitts and Gerald Everett honestly should probably be on a tier of their own or in this tier. I think I screwed up there maybe. So Logan Thomas here going up against San Francisco. The reason I do still like Logan Thomas a fair bit is that San Francisco does allow a lot of targets. Like, people target the tight end position against San Francisco a lot. Yards after the catch, stuff like that, not so great. But especially in full PPR here, solid play with Logan Thomas. Non-PPR, probably not a good play. Standard format. Half PPR, I think he's worth taking a shot on because he should see opportunities and targets in this game. And, yeah, it's always possible. Taysom Hill, fade of the week for me, going up against Tampa Bay. Well, look, for the most part, where Taysom finds success is in the running game. Tampa Bay is really good against the run. Over the past 2 weeks, the trend has been that, hey, you know what, we're just going to let Derek Carr cook. And Taysom Hill's not going to get on the field. We're not going to take Carr off of the field so much. And that obviously is not good for Taysom Hill. I don't see why this matchup against Tampa Bay would be one where they would say, hey, you know what, this whole Derek Carr playing the best that he's played in the last 2 weeks all season, we should probably try to revert that in this matchup where it's a good passing matchup. They're a tough rushing matchup. Why bring Taysom Hill onto the field too much? I don't think you try to fix what's not broken there. Especially in that matchup. Then we got Tyler Conklin going up against Cleveland. Not a good tight end matchup, but Tyler Conklin's, he's been there this season as probably somebody that you don't want to start. You haven't started. But if you needed a start, he's got a decent floor at least. And Chig just went off last week, but I'm not getting too excited over that, especially since I had him for the 2 weeks prior to that, and then I dropped him before last week. So that was cool. Let's look at this final tier. Nope. We got 2 tiers, just a little bit. So, Josh Oliver, Kate Otten, Jonnu Smith, Pat Fryermuth, Tyler Higbee, Tanner Hudson, Juwan Johnson. I don't think it's the end of the world if you're starting any of these guys, to be perfectly honest. And I am willing to take a shot on Josh Oliver because we just talked about it. That Green Bay defense is Swiss cheese. Look at that upper end. Pretty good there. Of course, this projection isn't based on a whole lot of information, but it should be the next man up, I believe, in the receiving tight end game for Minnesota. And then, yeah, the rest, haven't been incredibly reliable on the entirety of the season, but they can always have a game for you. And then Noah Fant, Dawson Knox, Durham Smythe, really don't want to mess with that. Guys who I don't currently have ranked, but might end up being ranked. Robert Tonyan, because of, as I said, where Cole Kmet might be not playing this week, so obviously then he'd be ranked. Michael Mayer, not sure if he's going to be healthy to play. Hunter Henry, same deal. Same with Luke Musgrave. So there you go. That is it for the tight ends. That's it for almost everything except for my DFS buys. This week, I'm taking Jake Ferguson at $5,000. Feeling pretty good about it as a solid buy, a good price. In the discount bin, if we're going to dig down there, $3,500 for Gerald Everett. Just talked about that a little bit and how I think a lot of people will like him a lot this week. And that is why my contrarian play was originally my discount bin play. But I think it's more of a contrarian play because a lot of people are probably going to be going down for a couple of guys. Gerald Everett's one of them. Whereas Kyle Pitts at $4,100 is a little more expensive than some of these guys. A lot of people don't like to trust Kyle Pitts at all. And I do think that it's a solid matchup there against Chicago. I think there's some upside there. And based on how he's done this season, he could turn it out for you this week and be fine. So that is it now for the tight ends. For the quarterbacks, thank you very, very much for staying tuned throughout the entirety of this video. I appreciate you. I love you. And I'll see you with the wide receivers later on today. Bye-bye.